In the restaurant, by Arkady Averchenko. Magic, it's pure sorcery. I heard the exclamation from a neighboring table. It was uttered by a gloomy man with sodden black mustaches and a glassy, bewildered stare. The wet black mustaches, the hair falling nearly to his eyebrows, and that glassy gaze provided unshakable proof that the possessor of these treasures was a fool. A fool in the most direct and literal sense of the word. One of his companions poured himself a beer, rubbed his hands together, and said, "Nothing more than sleight of hand and nimbleness of the fingers." "It's sorcery," the dark one insisted stubbornly, sucking on his mustache. The man who championed nimbleness of the fingers looked satirically at the third member of the company and cried out, "Very well. Would you like me to prove there is no sorcery involved?" The dark man gave a grim smile. "What? Are you some kind of a prestigiator?" "Evidently, if I'm saying so. Now then, I'll wager 100 rubles that within 5 minutes I can cut off every one of your buttons and sew them back on." The dark man tugged at a waistcoat button for some reason and said, "In 5 minutes? Cut them off and sew them on? That is inconceivable." "Perfectly conceivable. Well, is it a go? 100 rubles? No, that's too much. I only have 5. It's all the same to me. We can make it less. How about 3 bottles of beer?" The dark man gave a venomous wink. "But you'll lose, won't you?" "Who, me? We shall see." He reached out and shook the dark man's thin fingers, while the third member of the company held up his hands. "Now then, watch the clock and make sure it doesn't go over 5 minutes." We were all intrigued. Even the sleepy waiter, who had been sent for a plate and a sharp knife, shed his catatonic air. 1, 2, 3. I'm beginning." The man who had declared himself a magician took the knife, set down the plate, and began slicing off all the waistcoat buttons into it. "Any on the jacket, too?" "Of course. In the back, on the sleeves, near the pockets." The buttons rained into the plate with a clatter. "I've got them on my trousers, too," the dark man said, writhing with laughter. "And on my boots." "Fine, fine. What? Do you think I want to swindle you out of a button?" "Don't worry. Everything shall be cut off." Since the outer garments had been deprived of their restraining elements, it became possible to move on to the under layers. When the last buttons tumbled from the trousers, the dark man gleefully propped his feet up on the table. 8 buttons on each boot. Let's see how you manage to sew those back on in time." The magician, no longer replying, worked feverishly with his knife. Soon he wiped his perspiring brow and, setting the plate on the table, where like strange berries lay a heap of multicolored buttons and cufflinks, he grunted, "Done. Every last one." The waiter clapped his hands in admiration. 82 pieces. "Nimble. Now go and fetch me a needle and thread," the magician commanded. "Quickly now." Their drinking companion waved his watch in the air and suddenly snapped the case shut. "Too late. That's it. 5 minutes are up. You've lost." The one to whom this applied threw down the knife in annoyance. "Devil take me. I lost. Well, nothing for it. Waiter, bring these gentlemen 3 bottles of beer on my account, and, while you're at it, tell me what I owe." The dark man turned pale. "WH, where are you going?" The magician yawned. "To turn in. I'm as tired as a dog. A long day's work. But the buttons, what about sewing them back on?" "What? Why would I sew them back on if I lost? I didn't make the time. My own fault. The debt is paid. Good day to you, gentlemen." The dark man reached out imploringly after the departing figure, and with that movement, all of his clothes fell away like the shell from a newly hatched chick. Shamed, he yanked his trousers back up and blinked in horror. "Good Lord, what's to happen now?" What became of him, I do not know. I left along with the third member of the company, who had presumably abandoned the buttonless man. Though we were strangers, we stood on a street corner facing one another and laughed wordlessly for a long time. Drama at Sea by Arkady Averchenko. The sailors of an ocean-going vessel had caught a shark. They hauled it onto the deck with a hook and sliced it open. "I wonder, brothers, what's inside its stomach," said the ship's doctor. A brave sailor, with a single stroke of his knife, ripped open the shark's belly, fearlessly plunged his hand inside, and pulled out a human skull and a notebook in a sturdy buckram binding, only slightly corroded by the caustic gastric juices. "Look, boys," said the cabin boy. "A monkey's skull." "Nothing of the sort," the doctor countered. "Judging by the shape, this is the skull of a primitive savage. The first stage of evolution." "I don't think it's the first stage," the junior officer laughed. "And I doubt it's a primitive savage, given that the skull was accompanied by a notebook. Undoubtedly, the owner of the skull and the notebook are one and the same. Let's have a look. Bah, it's written in Russian. A compatriot. Poor devil. Listen to this. This notebook belongs to member Drykin. Sunday. Horror, horror, and horror once again. Our old fishing schooner, the Amphitrite, has gone to the bottom, to the very devil. Only the boss and 6 of us survived. We are drifting in a boat, heaven knows where. It's a good thing the boss grabbed the compass and a map. He says the shore is 80 miles away, and if we row well, we'll make it in 6 days. Put your backs into it, boys. Monday. We are rowing. Calculated the rations. If we have 2 hardtack biscuits and a piece of salt beef a day, we'll last 5 or 6 days. Rowing day and night. Tuesday. We rowed and rowed. Then suddenly Comrade Alyosha Gaykin stands up, and this Alyosha Gaykin says, "Tell me, comrades," he says, "this rowing is a heavy business, isn't it?" "Very heavy," we say. "This," he says, "is labor, and all labor must be organized. Therefore," he says, "I propose we immediately found a professional union of oarsmen to protect our proletarian rowing interests." The boss didn't exactly care for this. "What are you doing, boys?" he says. "What unions? Just row, and that's the end of it. Once we reach the shore, you can do whatever you like." "No," says Alyosha. "That's where you're lying. By then it'll be too late on the shore. We must organize now. Elect a chairman. Comrades. There you have it. That's what class consciousness means." He saw right through it. A brilliant head on those shoulders. We dropped our oars and started the election. Well, naturally, we elected Alyosha. In that case, Alyosha yells, so happy he was, "Since you've elected me, I demand an 8-hour workday, and that's final." And the boss, it was a laugh just looking at him. He was practically crying. "You've gone out of your minds," he screams. "Where has it ever been seen that a crew nearly goes to the bottom and starts demanding an 8-hour day? Why, I'll row 15 hours myself with my own hands. Think it over, boys." "We've thought enough," says Alyosha. "And since our class consciousness has awakened, there's no room for your talk. Am I right, comrades? Vote by standing up." We voted by standing, nearly capsized the boat, and they elected me secretary. How wonderful. I didn't even expect it. Wednesday. Decided to row like this. For hours before lunch, for hours after. And since the lunch wasn't much to speak of, Alyosha demanded an increase in rations under threat of a strike. Our bourgeois boss literally wept. "I'm saving the rations for you, you devils. You'll die of hunger." "That," says Alyosha, "is all nonsense talk. Since the proletariat is working, he must eat decently. Otherwise, There is a minimum of productivity. Thursday. Today, Alyosha pulled a little calendar book out of his pocket, glanced at it, and let out such a joyful shout. Brothers, comrades, why, today is a major holiday. No one has the right to make us work on a holiday. Drop the oars. What a head. Incredible. Friday. Today is the first day of our strike. The whole mess started because Alyosha presented the boss, on behalf of the union, with a demand for a medical fund and insurance in case of loss of working capacity. We were refused, so he struck. Alyosha calls this a conflict with the employer. What a brain. In England or somewhere else, he'd be a minister, but here he's just wasting his time. Saturday. The strike is proceeding normally. Shore is 68 miles away. Rations will only last until tomorrow. If the boss stops feeding us after that, we'll break the oars. Alyosha calls this sabotage of the tools of production. Sharks have appeared. What do those bastards want? Sunday. The rations are finished. A working man has to eat, after all. The sharks have gone completely mad. They've been circling the boat day and night. No 8-hour workday for them. Alyosha has gone a bit quiet, but the sea, on the contrary, is picking up. A yellow cloud is crawling in from the west. The bitch looks almost alive. The sharks are nearly jumping over the gunwale. Alyosha even punched one in the snout. Sunday evening. A storm. Alyosha is crying for some reason. "Forgive me, brothers," he says, "wretch that I am. Because of me, everyone is going to purr." What a cursed wave nearly flipped the boat. The sharks. Brothers, why is it like this? From the last letter of the entry, a long, nervous pencil tail trailed off, as if someone had interrupted the union secretary before he could finish the word. The following pages were blank. "What a strange story," the doctor whispered, tossing the skull over the side. "And the most terrible thing of all is that no one gained anything from it." The officer demurred. "What do you mean, no one? What about the sharks?" Business. By Arkady Averchenko. On distant coffee plantations, under the rays of a searing, merciless sun, thousands of semi-clad people toil to harvest billions of coffee beans. Then this coffee is loaded onto ships. The ships plow through the immeasurable expanses of seas and oceans. Then, in Constantinople, the bales of coffee are unloaded. Then it is ground. Then it is roasted. Then it is brought to the cafes. It is brewed and served to patrons who conduct their business only over a cup of coffee. Then absolutely nothing comes of this business. And it truly pains me. Is it worth it for thousands of semi-clad people to roast under a scorching sun, for steamships to sail, for laborers to unload, for someone to grind, roast, and brew, also that in the end, not a single matter settled over a cup of coffee ever comes to fruition? Here are the elements that comprise every Constantinople business deal. A business thought occurs to one man. He communicates it to an intermediary. Meanwhile, in the cafe, they drink coffee. Enchanted by the business thought, the intermediary rushes to a capitalist. They drink coffee. The capitalist also becomes enthralled by the marvelous business idea. Finally, all three meet, gulping down coffee from every cup in the vicinity. Solemn oaths are sworn to dedicate all the remaining days of their lives, all the juices of their intellect, to the execution of this remarkable venture. They depart. 3 days later, the capitalist to the intermediary, "You see, unfortunately, I cannot put money into this venture because Argentine wool has dropped in value relative to Brazilian grain. Do you understand?" The intermediary, "I understand perfectly." He understands nothing. In any case, I'm a bit too busy for this deal myself right now. I'm organizing a metropolitan subway system under the Bosphorus. The intermediary meeting the author of the idea, our little capitalist, has backed out. I felt it from the very beginning. I do, however, have another one in mind. If you'd like. No, thank you. I've already found something else quite suitable without your help. Truly? Well, thank God. I wouldn't have had the time for that deal anyway. I'm opening an aerial restaurant on a tethered balloon. A marvelous thought. If only I could find a capitalist. A capitalist? The author of the previous idea muses. I believe I might have something suitable for you. And oh, a miracle! The previous business is painlessly and easily forgotten. The initiator of the last deal has transformed into the intermediary for the current one, while the previous intermediary has, conversely, become the initiator. A capitalist is found instantly. And again, on the coffee plantations, work is in full swing. Harvesting, loading, transporting, unloading, roasting, grinding, brewing, for what? Only so that 3 businessmen can talk, draft a contract, swear to walk boldly hand in hand along the chosen path until the end of their lives, and then go their separate ways without so much as batting an eye. Never offer a Constantinople man a sure thing. Such things are not for him. He will turn away in disgust from a business that might yield a modest 50% profit. But he will dive head, hands, and feet into an aerial restaurant on a tethered balloon. He will sink every last penny into an original symphonic orchestra composed exclusively of hermaphrodites. Never try to persuade him with minimal costs. God forbid you tempt him with a modest, inexpensive estimate. Ring the bells, boom the drums, dazzle him, fleece him. Then, mesmerized like a rabbit before a cobra's head, he will throw himself into your jaws. For heaven's sake, the laundry I'm proposing will be the best in the city. 10 steam engines at 40 atmospheres, 280 laundresses, 102 pressers, all beauties hand-picked. Naturally, our own soap factory and a small plot of land to grow potatoes will make our own starch. 8 trucks will deliver linens to the entire periphery of the city. An electric station, triple Spanish bookkeeping. Ding, boom, crash, bang, wallop. Before my departure for Czechoslovakia, I managed to lead astray and ruin a whole mass of Constantinople businessmen. Simple-minded, but as solid as a brass mortar. I received an enticing offer from a certain capitalist to open a magnificent enterprise in Berlin. I hadn't even finished a dozen cups of coffee before my work was at a fever pitch. I attracted other capitalists, uprooted civil servants from their posts, organized and arranged everything, but they were all ruined by me, except for the first capitalist. He continues to drink his coffee serenely, while they resigned from their positions, sold their bulky belongings, converted their money into German marks. They did this precisely because I am as solid and steady as a brass mortar. Such a man does not let one down. Had it not been for me, they would have met peacefully consumed 2 or 3 liters of coffee, and peacefully gone about their separate ways. But one must not pack a brass mortar in the same crate as fragile bohemian crystal. With my solidity, I crushed them, ground them into powder. They lost their jobs, their marks plummeted, they lived through the proceeds of their sole belongings, and only the brass mortar remains alive, along with that first capitalist. If I were to tell him what a commotion occurred because of him, he would only open his eyes wide. It was their own fault, the fools for believing. But wait, if you please. Think of how much coffee was drunk. We swore to walk hand in hand, and, as they said in the old days, we kissed the cross on it. What can you do? It's just the coffee business.